Hey everybody, it's Dave here from Dragonhill Games, and you're watching This Week in MTG Finance. As always, and before we get started, I want to thank MTG Stocks for allowing us to use graphical information for the purposes of this video. Alright, we're going to kick things off with the top 10 winners percentage-wise this week, and we're going to start right here with Erratic Portal from Exodus. So we're currently valued around $11.10, and we topped out this week at $11.65, so down a little bit off of its highs. Essentially what's happening is this card is trying to find its new home, and I think that's probably around, the $10 to $11 range. Somewhere in there is sort of a safe bet for this card. Really good card for Commander. I mean, we went over it last week, but we'll just go over it quickly again. So Erratic Portal is an artifact. It costs 4 mana. And you can pay 1 and tap it, return target creature to its owner's hand, unless its controller pays 1. So super good in something like Commander. Essentially, you're forcing your opponents to leave mana up and open all the time to be able to pay for this tax. Otherwise, they run the risk of having their Commander or other valuable creatures returned to their hands. Alright, and the number 9 card on our list this week is Cloudstone Curio from Ravnica. This card's at $40 now, and it's up another 46% this week. Man, the graph on this card is really interesting. It's like a set of stairs. But, I mean, that kind of makes sense. It is a combo type card. So if you're not familiar with Cloudstone Curio, you pay 3, it's an artifact, and whenever a non-artifact permanent comes into play under your control, you may return another permanent you control that shares a permanent type with it to its owner's hand. So this type of card just screams, combo, right? And that's sort of outlined here by the graph. So anytime we've had a new card from a new set that works with Cloudstone Curio, it's taken another spike. And that's why we have this sort of steppy graph. And currently we're on, creating a new step right now. So who knows where the top is for this card. But I think, it's probably a reasonable bet to say that $40 is probably around the ceiling for this card anyway. Now, that said, I can't find what's causing this spike right now. I mean, sort of the latest one that I know of is a combo with God Eternal Oketra. But that's nothing new. I mean, since War of the Spark, we already saw a spike there when, God Eternal Oketra would have been sort of announced and people figured this combo out. So there's clearly been something going on the last week or two. Like I said, I couldn't find any new information on this card. So if you know, go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. I would really appreciate that. And our number 8 winner this week is demure Signet, specifically the Commander 2018 version. So this particular printing is sitting at $3.37, and it's up 73% this week. Now, I did want to mention that this is the highest value printing of all of these printings, and this card has had a lot of different printings. Of note, it's also the most recent printing. So, a few things to note about this. It is the new alternate art, but you can also find that art on the Masters 2017 version, which can still be had for around the $2 mark. And the original Ravnica printing is still by far your best investment at only $1.80. And our number 7 winner this week is Gideon of the Trials from Amonkhet. Card's sitting at $20 and it's up 75% this week. I mean, we've really had a jump over the course of the last few weeks, going from around the $3.75 mark to its current value of around $20. So why is that? Well, first off, it's the only real printing of this card. I mean, there's some promo printings and then, of course, the pre-release printing, but those are definitely in short supply. So only real printing of the card, it's at mythic rarity. So, I mean, the quantity of them out there is definitely on the low side. And this card is getting a ton of attention in Pioneer, right? Shows up in a bunch of white weenie decks, various Azorius control decks, and all of that kind of stuff. But one of the real reasons why Gideon is really taking a jump over the last few weeks is because one of the most popular decks in Pioneer right now is Inverter Thassa Oracle combo deck, right? So Gideon is just 3 mana, and his 0 ability is you get an emblem with, as long as you control a Gideon Planeswalker, you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. So if you run into Inverter Thassa combo deck in Pioneer, you slam down your Gideon, and now they've got to deal with that before they can go ahead and combo off and win with Thassa's Oracle. Alright, and in the number 6 slot, we have Crocs, Titan of Death's Hunger from the most recent Theros Beyond Death set. So Crocs is currently valued around $19.75, and he's up 97% this week. I mean, we hit an all-time high of $20 pretty much right on the mark, and we're down a little bit off of that. but I think this is probably the new home for Crocs. If you pay attention to my channel, you know I called this one out a few weeks back when it was around $8. There's no reason why this card should have been $8 at the time, and it's starting to get a lot of attention in Modern and even some Standard play, but more so even in Commander. There's people building this as their Commander, that building decks around Crocs, right? And those decks are putting up really, really solid results. So, like I said, called this one out a few weeks back when it was around $8. There was no reason why it should have been that price, and I think that $20 is probably a reasonable home for this card in the current environment. In fact, if you picked it up a few weeks ago at $8 and you made a sizable investment in a card like this, now would be definitely a great time to probably take some profits. I mean, I don't see another big jump for this card in the short term anyway, but this is probably a realistic home for this card, so I don't think you're going to get it really for any cheaper either. So like I said, if you're an investor, a great time to kind of take some profits on a card like this for sure. All right, our number 5 winner this week is Boros Signet, specifically the Commander Anthology version, and we're currently sitting at $3.20. And this particular printing is up 112% this week. So, again, another printing specific card. Honestly, I can't tell you why. I mean, there's lots of printings of the same art of this card. In fact, the original Ravnica printing is like a third of the price of this card at only $1.10, and it has the same art on it, right? Some of the newer printings have different art. For example, the Commander 2017, the Commander Anthology version. And those printings are around the $2 mark, but definitely your best bet here for sure is the original Ravnica printing. The Signets are starting to see increases because we are getting a lot more interest in Commander play, right? I mean, this is the year of the Commander, and we got a bunch of new Commander decks coming out. We've had a bunch of secret layer drops that are inspiring people to either get back into Commander or build decks sort of that they've always wanted to build, right? So there's definitely demand for things like all the various signets and things of that nature. But I would be very careful about investing in cards like this. We're going to see a lot of Commander product this year, folks. I mean, we got 7 new Commander decks coming out. You can bet your money that, all of those decks are going to have various mana rocks in them. So we're going to be seeing a lot of reprints of the things like the signets for sure. So I would be very cautious about investing in the signets as sort of, an investment. But if you do need to pick up copies, then definitely the original Ravnica printing is your best bet. All right, our top 4 cards this week are all combo related. So let's get at it and start right here with Grinding Station. This card's at $19.15, and it's up 139% this week. So it's an uncommon from 5th Dawn, but it is the only printing, and it's getting a lot of attention in a legacy format for sure. So this is one of those cards that combos with Underworld Breach. Essentially what happens here is Grinding Station is 2 mana. It's an artifact. We can tap and sacrifice an artifact. Target player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Whenever an artifact comes into play, we may untap Grinding Station. So essentially what we're doing here is with Underworld Breach on the go, we have 0 casting cost artifacts. It is a legacy, so we have things like a Lotus Petal, Lion's Eye Diamond, things of those nature. We sacrifice that, mill ourselves 3, return a Lion's Eye Diamond or Lotus Petal, whatever we're using, back to our hand, play it, untap Grinding Station, sacrifice, rinse, and repeat. Basically mill ourselves completely, and then of course win with what else? Thassa's Oracle. And back on the list again this week in the number 3 slot is Doomsday, specifically the Weatherlight version. So we're at $15.80 now, and this particular printing is up 216% again this week. So, I mean, all the printings of this are definitely on the rise. The Classic 6 edition is around $15. You can still get the Masters 25 printing, which is an alternate art printing, for under $10. So if this is something that you're looking at, then that's definitely your best value at the moment for sure. I mean, I don't really need to talk about Doomsday any more than we've already talked about it. We talked about it a couple of weeks already in a row. So again, Doomsday is just a combo piece for Thassa's Oracle, essentially, turning your library into just 5 cards, but whatever 5 cards you happen to want. And then you just basically need to, survive out another couple of turns, drop Thassa's Oracle, and go ahead and win the game. All right, and the number 2 card on our list this week is Indomitable Creativity from Aether Revolt. So currently at $2.95, and this card is up a whopping 293% this week. So personal story I want to tell you guys, but we'll get to that in a sec. First, let's talk about why Indomitable Creativity is jumping. So currently a modern deck that is comboing out Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn. And Indomitable Creativity, essentially what happens is it's 3 red and X, it's a sorcery, and we destroy X target artifacts and or creatures. For each permanent destroyed this way, its controller reveals cards from the top of their library until an artifact or creature card is revealed and exiles that card. Those players put the exiled cards onto the battlefield, then shuffle their libraries. So essentially what's happening here is this is kind of like a red version of Polymorph. We're going to play with only things like Emrakul in our deck as our creatures, and then we're going to play things like manlands and other things that produce sort of token creatures, things of that nature. And then we're going to sack the tokens and basically reveal cards until we hit Emrakul and put her straight onto the battlefield. Seems like a pretty good deal for just 4 mana. On to my personal story and what's kind of using that right now and what's sort of sparked the new interest in something like this is Dwarven Mine. So Dwarven Mine is actually a mountain if you have a look at it. So it is fetchable, right? So when you put Dwarven Mine onto the battlefield, as long as you control 3 other mountains, you create a little dwarf token, and then we're going to just go ahead and sack that token to Indomitable Creativity, and then go ahead and grab Emrakul out of our deck, throw her onto the battlefield, and essentially GG. Back to my personal story. I invested heavily in Indomitable Creativity when I first saw this card. I mean, the bottom dropped out of it when it hit around the 70-cent mark. I bought a few hundred copies anyway, so I've been sitting on these for what seems like forever now. I saw this combo, right? My original thoughts were, of course, Dwarven Mine wasn't out at the time, so my original thoughts were playing things like, Ink Moth in the deck or Blink Moth Nexus, and then sacking those, manlands, right? Sacking those to Indomitable Creativity. The problem with that was it was just a little bit too slow, and that's kind of why this card never really took off, right? Because you need to be able to cast Indomitable Creativity and turn your Ink Moth or Blink Moth or whatever you're using into a creature, which also costs you mana. So we were talking about sort of a turn 5 kind of at the earliest combo, right? You might be able to do it a bit earlier if you're using some of the rituals or something crazy like that, but it just wasn't a deck. And I did try the deck. It just wasn't a deck that panned out. So like I said, bought a few hundred copies of this when I first saw it, and when I first saw it hit the sort of floor, because I knew one day that there would be a deck with this. I didn't think it would take 2-3 years, but here we are, and the card's $3 now, so I'm happy to see that for sure, and I will be definitely unloading a bunch of my copies into the marketplace over the next few weeks. All right, and our big winner this week is Silence. Now, this is the Magic 2011 version, and it's currently at almost $10 right on the nose. It's up 362% this week, but all the printings, so it was also printed in Magic 2010 and Magic 2014, and all of the printings have seen massive jumps this week. Of note, the Magic 2014 is still only $6, so if this is a card that you want to get because you're building one of these crazy decks, then that's by far and away your best value. So let's talk about Silence. 1 mana, your opponents can't cast spells this turn at instant speed, 1 white mana, right? So this card is getting a lot of attention in these Underworld Breach decks, and also in the Indomitable Creativity deck we just talked about, as a way to put the brakes on your opponent and prevent them from stopping you comboing off. So essentially what you're going to do is you're just going to go ahead and silence your opponent during their upkeep on the turn that you want to go ahead and win the game. I've always really thought that Silence was an awesome card, and I'm surprised it's never seen a lot of play in the past. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not exactly junk status. I mean, the card was $1.50, $2, so it's always been sort of one of those more casual type of cards. It's never really seen a good solid spot in competitive decks, which is kind of surprising, because with things like Isochron Scepter, like stick a silence on an Isochron Scepter and it basically says your opponent gets to play lands and instants for the rest of the game. So I mean, there's definitely things you can really nasty things you can do with silence, and like I said, I'm surprised that it hasn't seen a lot more play in the past. But the recent spikes definitely is because this card is getting used as a preventative measure in these combo decks. All right, and before I get to cards I'm investing in this week, I just wanted to say whether it's 12:01 a.m. and you're the first one to watch this video, or it's Monday morning and you're driving on your way to work, I really appreciate you being here. And if you're not a subscriber, now's a great time to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We post at least 2 videos every week. All right, so the first one on my list this week is Merkel the Aeon's Torn, and specifically the Modern Masters 2015 version. We're currently priced around $22.50. But most of the versions can be had between the $23 and $25 price tag. So Emrakul is one of those cards that just sort of crops up all the time, right? Appears constantly in combo decks in various formats, Legacy and Modern. Currently getting a bunch of attention in Modern again because of the Indomitable Cruelty deck that we talked about earlier in the card set had spiked. But I mean, decks like Breach and Reanimator are sort of perennial decks that crop up every once in a while. Emrakul's taken a bit of a nosedive over the last months to a year or so, right? So we hit a low this year of $20.66, which is sort of an all-time low on this particular printing of the card for sure anyway. But we're bouncing up off those lows. So now is the time. If you need copies of Emrakul, I don't think you're going to be getting it for any cheaper than this. And actually at this price, I would consider this as an investment opportunity as well. All right, and the next one I have for you guys this week is Underworld Breach from the latest set, Theros Beyond Death. Currently priced around $4, and that's about where this card has been since the set release. And I'm quietly kind of just accumulating this card. I'm not actively sort of seeking it, but I'm definitely getting any copies that I can get and kind of socking them away. Let's be realistic about this card. This card is getting played in non-rotating formats and eternal formats, right? I mean, Pioneer, Legacy, Modern, even Vintage, right? But the one thing you don't see here is standard. It's not getting any standard play, right? So things like when we have a rotation, it shouldn't affect the price of this card really at all. So, I think this is the bottom for this card. Over time, as supplies dwindle, this card is definitely going to start ticking up. And grabbing copies now for your collection or for investment purposes is an excellent opportunity. All right, and last but not least, we have our speculation play for the week. That's right, it's Soul Guide Lantern from Theros Beyond Death. So sitting around 35 cents, basically where the card's been living ever since the set was released, right? Look at all the attention this card is getting in all the different formats. So Pioneer, Legacy, Vintage, Modern, right? I mean, this is just appearing as sideboard tech in a bunch of different decks in a bunch of different formats, which bodes really well for the long-term prospects of this card. It's also super good in Commander if you think about it. So anyway, Soul Guide Lantern is 1 mana for an artifact, and when Soul Guide Lantern enters the battlefield, we exile a card from a graveyard. Then we can tap and sacrifice Soul Guide Lantern, and this is very important, exile each opponent's graveyard. So this middle sort of ability here gives us the ability to kind of get rid of everyone else's graveyard while leaving ours intact. So if we have some sort of strategies, like for example in my Zur deck, right? I hate having to use Rest in Peace because I do use Sun Titan to get a bunch of my enchantments back from my graveyard. And when I have to play Rest in Peace to stop some sort of Reanimator or Golgari mess that's going on, then I sort of mess with my own strategies of being able to use my Sun Titan. So something like this is perfect in Commander for me. It allows me to exile my opponent's graveyards while leaving mine intact. Very important. And we can also pay 1 mana, tap, and sacrifice Soul Guide Lantern to draw a card. So nice little cantrip type effect on there. Now, like I said, appearing in all kinds of formats, it is an uncommon, so there's going to be like billions of these things out there, right? So don't expect this card to be, $10 at any point or anytime soon. But there's no reason why, once the supplies start to dwindle and Theros Beyond Death has kind of been stopped opening, there's no reason why this isn't a $2, $3, $4 card, right? Think of Relic of Progenitus, right? Some similar type effect to Relic of Progenitus. In fact, it's actually replacing Relic of Progenitus in certain types of decks. So anyway, that's my speculation play for the week. All right, I really hope you guys enjoyed watching This Week in MTG Finance. If you did, go ahead and smash that like button. It really helps me out, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.